Meantime, MPs returned to Parliament Hill last week, marking a busy week in politics. Let's bring in CTV News political commentator and former NDP leader Tom Mulcair. Good morning, Tom.
Morning, Matt.
Let's get into this, shall we, too? I'm curious, can we just start with Pierre Poilievre as well?
Yeah.
You know, we're going to have more on that interview with Vashi tomorrow, at least at this point. But for him, this first week, Mark Carney wasn't there for the entire week either, but he's facing a leadership review next year. He doesn't sound by some of what we're reading, and we'll hear more tomorrow, that he's too concerned about it. What do you make of for the leader of the Conservative Party right now?
I'll start with the last part of your question. I don't think that Pierre Poilievre has any reason to be worried about his leadership review. He's very popular within the party. And even though they came up short after having had a massive lead over the Liberals, the departure of Trudeau, the arrival of Carney, and the arrival of Trump meant everything changed overnight. They were able still to get their best result in many years. So I think that'll keep him in the driver's seat for some time to come. With regard to the opposition role and looking at a government and saying, well, what I would go for would be, for example, a trade deal with no tariffs. I mean, that's pretty darn easy to say. And that's the thing about Poilievre. I mean, he's got a ready-made answer for everything that the prime minister has to do. But of course, he's never been in that role, and we saw it again this week. I did think that there was an attempt by Poilievre to tone things down. His first day back on the job with Carney on Monday, I sensed that even though Poilievre is always going to say, no, I'm just going to be myself, he was less snarky, less snide than he usually is, and it was an interesting question period where, there was actually some decent exchanges. Later in the week, when Carney wasn't there, the heat went back up again, and it was good old Poilievre. But I do notice, and I think it's easy to acknowledge that his tone, even in that interview with Vashi Kapelos, is very statesmanlike, and I think that that's what he's trying to project more and more. With regard to the substance of it, again, we're dealing with a very different character in Donald Trump. I mean, it's impossible to guess from one day to the next, much less 1 week to the next, what he's actually going to do or say. That's why it was so important that Carney get on that aircraft, go to Mexico, meet with his Mexican vis-a-vis, Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, and start laying down tracks for cooperation and collaboration between Mexico and Canada as we try to renegotiate the Canada-US-Mexico deal.
Which is going to come, and that's what I wanted to ask you about as well, too, is we saw the prime minister go, we saw that leadership, and hoping to avoid what happened, the possibility of last time when Mexico did sign, it almost felt like a side deal with the United States for it, and trying to be on this united front. As we get into this consultation period, into the actual review of CUSMA next year, what are you expecting? Again, a lot of uncertainty. We certainly don't know, as we talked about, too, what Donald Trump is going to do, what's going to happen. But
exactly.
What are you expecting to hear from businesses, from industry, from politicians, right across the country as we get into this review?
I think that you hit the nail right on the head, Matt. When you talk about the uncertainty, and that's the trademark of Donald Trump, he tries to keep his adversary guessing, keep them out of step and with any plan that they might have had. But it's basically because Trump, most of the time, is just making it up as he goes along. He's just trying to see what might stick and what might not. With regard to Mexico, there was a problem that had to be fixed. There had been people in Canada, senior people, opining that, well, maybe we should just go it alone this time, go back to what we had before the NAFTA. So prior to the Canada-US-Mexico trade deal, the current one, that was the North American Free Trade Agreement, and prior to that, a Canada-US trade deal, just the two of us. And people are, saying, well, maybe we have to go back to that. Carney was showing that his intention is just the opposite. He wants to get into lockstep with the Mexicans, wants to take a common approach as we come up. Everybody's experienced enough to know that there will be issues about which Mexico will have its own point of view in Canada. But the idea of sitting down with Mexico and saying, look, we've got to take a common approach to dealing with Trump because it's so mercurial. You're never sure which way it's going to go. I think that was a very smart move. So, yeah, Poilievre is going to grouse about the fact that he's not in the House, but he's busy being the Prime Minister of Canada.
All right. CTV News political commentator, former NDP leader Tom Mulcair. Thanks for this morning, Tom. Appreciate it.
All the best.